This is a story I've never told anyone. Because how the hell do you admit to your family you were almost abducted? This happened to me when I was 11, or if you will, in 2005. It was a usual summer day for me. I got up about noon, went on a bike ride with my brother, then came home and spent most of the remaining daylight in our above-ground pool. We were well off, but by no means rich. So as I was relaxing for the night, and intent on spending the rest of the night playing video games, I decided to check my MySpace profile really quick, and spend some of the energy on my games there. As I finish off my Dog Wars energy bar, I'm fit to close out the browser and head back downstairs to play some PlayStation, when I get a friend request. Allie, 13, 3 hours away from nowhere, Kentucky. I clicked the name because I didn't know an Allie, not even an Allison, or really any girls who had A in their names at all. She was pretty, and 11-year-old me just scoffed like, why would she want to be friends with me? I almost ignored it. Almost. I accepted the request, and with not much else to do, I sent her a message, asking a simple question like, should I know you from somewhere? She tells me we've not met, but she's friends with one of my friends, Mike. I check out her profile, see she and Mike share a lot of common interests, and are on each other's friends list, so it checks out. I don't message Mike to ask him about her, but I was a very trusting young boy, and had no reason to believe she was anything but what she said she was. For the next few weeks, I talked to her every night, for no less than 3 hours usually. We just chat about things, school, music, television, typical kid things. I didn't really think anything about it more than just being MySpace friends. Until she said that she liked me. I sort of laughed it off, thinking she just meant like, in the way friends like each other. However, she clarified that she meant she'd had feelings for me, and wanted to meet in real life. She lived pretty far away from me, so I didn't really see how this would be possible. I knew my parents were not about to take me to some girl I'd met online's house. I wouldn't want them to in the first place. They were decent parents and all, I just never felt I could talk to them about these kinds of things. So I just sort of shrugged it off. I told her it'd be hard for us to meet, because as much as I like riding my bike, a 3-hour bike ride to a part of the state I'd hardly even seen before was not something I'd be comfortable doing. She was very understanding, and said that she at least wanted to talk on the phone, instead of just messages. I agreed, but told her never to call my number, and to always let me be the one to call her, because I didn't want my parents picking up and asking questions. She understood, and I called her. The first time I got her dad, and he gave me a gruff, "Who is this?" It was weird, because I had the phone with me at the computer and told her I was calling. And she said she had the phone with her as well. However, I didn't think anything of it at all. I told him it was James, and that I was looking for Allie. He told me to hold on a second. And there was a rustling sound on the phone, like someone trying to make it sound like they were handing it over to someone. Again, I didn't really think anything of it. And when I heard the high-pitched, "Hello," I didn't really think anything more of it. We talked for a few minutes. Then she said she had to go because her dad was expecting a call as well. I shrugged it off and told her to just message me and we could talk again later. We kept messaging back and forth for a while, and before I knew it, it was almost the end of the summer. And she was not satisfied, having not met me in person yet. So she posed an idea. She said there was an end-of-summer event going on at a lake near my house. She said she and her family used to go there sometimes, and that she could probably talk them into going there for the event. My family usually went to the area on the 4th of July and stuff, and having just had a nice time there in July, it wasn't too hard for me to convince my folks as well. A few nights later, she lets me know that they had agreed, and that she was super excited to finally meet me. She told me she was just going to kiss me as soon as she saw me, and I just sort of blushed and tried to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal, like I was some stud who'd kissed plenty of girls before. But I wasn't. I was totally pumped to finally kiss a girl, and it was only a few nights away. I had a hard time sleeping the next couple of nights, and I stayed up most of the night talking to Ali. We were both excited, and couldn't wait to meet. It was a very magical experience. The night before, I think I stayed up until 8 a.m. talking to her. So the day had come, and after an early afternoon bike ride and a short swim, our family loaded into the car, and my dad took the truck so that me and my brother could take our bikes to the lake with us. There was plenty of bike trails, and we always enjoyed riding there. I told my brother I wasn't going to be hanging with him the whole night, however, and would only ride with him a little bit before I went to meet another friend. He wanted to tag along, like little brothers often do. But I quickly convinced him he didn't want to hang out with me because the kids were mean, and I was only hanging out with them because of one of them. He didn't ask questions after that. About an hour later, the sun was starting to set, and my brother said he was going back to meet with our parents anyway. He didn't like riding in the dark. He had a habit of crashing as it was. So when I ventured off on my own, it was without hindrance. I made my way to the picnic area Ali and I had agreed to meet at, and I sat on one of the picnic tables, my bike resting against the side. I sat for a long time, so long that I started to get worried, and was ready to leave because the fireworks were about to start and Ali hadn't shown up yet. I stood up and jumped down from the picnic table, and just as I did, a rusty old white pickup truck pulled up beside the tables. The man inside reached across the cab to roll down the window and gave me a weird smile, telling me that he was Ali's dad and that he was going to take me to her. I started feeling strange about the situation, so I just gave him a blank stare and said, "What?" He turned the engine off, thinking maybe I couldn't hear him over the sound of it, and climbed out of the truck.
"I said I'm here to take you to Ali. Hop on in,"
he said, opening the passenger door and motioning for me to climb in. The truck was full of garbage, and it looked very dirty, and I could smell oil and other things coming from the truck. I gave a crooked look and told him I wasn't going to get in. As he grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the truck, I realized pretty quickly what he was all about.
"Get in the damn truck,"
he barked, squeezing my arm so tightly that I thought it was broken. I pulled away, practically giving myself an Indian burn as I told him I was leaving. He came after me, so I did the only thing I could think of to repel a grown man twice my size, and probably thrice my age. I reared back and kicked him square in the genitals. I didn't bother to wait to see how he handled the blow. I hopped on my bike and pedaled with all my might back to the other side of the lake where my family was. He didn't follow me. At least I don't think he did. If he did, he might have seen my dad, who is a rather large guy, and definitely not someone you'd want to fight with after he'd had a few beers. I never saw him again, and when I got home and went to message Ali to tell her what a jerk her dad was, the profile was gone. I saw Mike before school started, and he said he had no idea who Allie was, and didn't even remember adding her on MySpace. It wasn't until some years later I realized how terribly close I'd come to being abducted. And God knows what that man wanted to do to me. Allie's dad. Let's not meet again. A little about me. I'm currently 22. This happened when I was 10ish. I had a cell phone at the time, but only because my parents traveled for their work, so I stayed with my grandparents while my parents were on the road. My dad was working a job in Austin, but my mom was home with me. I had a break in school, spring break or Christmas, so my mom and I decided to fly down to Austin to see him. My mom is a smoker, and me being 10, she didn't want me in the cigar room in the airport, which was basically a glass box full of smoke. So we leave our gate and head down that way. Thankfully, there's a bookstore maybe 10 feet from the cigar room, which also has mostly glass windows. So my mom sends me to the bookstore and sits close to the door of the cigar room so she can see me. Before we parted ways, my mom told me to send her a text message saying, I really want this book, if I got any hinky vibes from anyone. Well, I'm a reader, so I think I'll look for a while until my mom is ready to get me. There probably won't be any issue. After about 5 minutes of being in this bookstore, I notice a guy walk in. I really only remember his grey suit and black dress shoes. I notice his shoes come over by where I am, the thriller section, so I move away to another section, where he promptly follows me again. I assumed it was just coincidence, since I was still looking at more mature books, and move over a few feet to another section, where they have books on racks in the middle of the floor rather than on shelves on the wall. The guy moves over to the same rack I'm at, but at the other side. My freakometer is going off like crazy, which is rarely wrong. So I do one last thing to test my theory of this guy, and I walk over to the little kids section, like Hungry Caterpillar type books, and the guy follows me again. I'm sufficiently freaking out, so I go back to the thriller section, which is closest to the checkout desk, pick up a random book, and text my mom, I really want this book. Not 2 seconds later, I smell my mom's perfume and hear her say, Oh good, you found something. We promptly pay and leave. Once we were away from the store, I told my mom what happened, and she told me she had seen the guy follow me across the store twice, and immediately walked over because her freakometer was off the charts. She hadn't even gotten my message because she was already walking over. Before we go back to our gate, we stop at the ladies' room, and I noticed the bookstore guy coming down the hall, and silently pointed out to my mom, who went on high alert. After the ladies' room, we head to our gate, where we see bookstore guy sitting 2 seats down from our luggage. So my mom sat me down right next to the plane entrance thing, and grabbed our stuff. After we board our plane, bookstore guy is only a couple rows away from us. But we can't really move because, well, it's a plane. Finally, we have a layover midway between Nashville, our first airport, and Austin. I didn't notice the rest of this, but my mom did. The guy got off right behind us and followed us to our next gate. My mom was just pissed at this point, and ready to throw down with this guy, but won't, because I'm with her. We verify where our gate is, and our next plane's ETA, and take off to the smoking area. Another glass box filled with smoke, where she brought me in with her, and smoked the fastest cigarette ever. Apparently, the guy had followed across the airport, to the cigar room, and just stood outside, waiting. We stopped in a gift shop so I could get my dad a gift and grab a drink. And he followed us there too. Finally, my mom has had more than enough, but isn't going to confront him personally because he hasn't done anything or engaged us in a very serious way. So we go back to our gate where my mom tells the lady by the plane entrance what's been going on since Nashville, and she calls security. These two huge security guards come down to our gate and start talking to my mom, who says very loudly and pointing, "That man has been following us since we arrived at the airport in Nashville. He's making us very uncomfortable." After telling them the full story, after hearing my mom be loud and seeing her pointing directly at him, bookstore guy takes off running. So security called for backup and followed him, and like 2 minutes later we boarded our plane for Austin without creepy bookstore guy. I wasn't what you'd call hood or hip when I was a teenager. I grew up in the suburbs with a Puerto Rican mother and a Trinidadian father. My household consisted of strict parenting and constant lectures about the horrors drugs can do to your body. Naturally, I rebelled. I took my first puff of a cigarette when I was 14 and didn't like it until I learned how to inhale. My parents never found out that when I took our dog for a walk, I was also sucking on a cancer stick. If they ever knew that, I would have certainly been punished in the worst way possible. A few blocks down the road from our subdivision was a neighborhood called Fieldstone, where most of my friends lived. Fieldstone was a cluster of low-income houses that always had children in the yard, guys selling or doing drugs, or old men drinking beer and playing dominoes. I loved going to Fieldstone because it was a whole different country compared to the manicured lawns and two-story houses that I lived in. My best friend's name was Nyanka. She and I would go home on 2 different buses, change clothes, watch an episode of Maury, and meet up at Ingalls, the halfway point between our houses. We would walk to her house in Fieldstone and do our homework, then explore the neighborhood. One hot summer day, as Nyanka and I were walking towards our friend Brittany's house, we passed a man named Key. Key was about 32 and had craters in his face that I later found out were due to meth use. Nyanka knew him, and we stopped to say hello. Key then invited us to his house to chief. I had no idea what chiefing was until Nyanka whispered that we were about to smoke some weed. I was nervous as hell because of the terrible stories my dad told me about this guy he knew that smoked one time and forgot his name and had to be put in a straitjacket. I didn't want to look like a chump, and I trusted my friend, so I put on a brave face and kept moving. Anyways, we get to Key's house, and his roommate, a 30-something paraplegic that got around on a wheelchair, greeted us. He creeped me out immediately. Here we are, 2 16-year-olds in this grown man's house, with his roommate eyeing me up and down, like a juicy steak. We sat down on the couch, while Key rolled up, and the roommate, whose name was Troy, wheeled his wheelchair right in front of me and just stared. I looked at Nyanka, and she was just as cool as a cucumber. Key came out with the blunt in his mouth, and it finally reached me. The feeling of TCH coursing through my system for the first time was the greatest feeling I had. I felt like I could float, and I was thinking some pretty awesome thoughts. Everything was hilarious. Key then asked Nyanka to come in the kitchen, and she went in and talked to him for a while. When she came back, she told me Key wanted to talk to me. When I got in the kitchen, Key was standing next to a large wad of cash on the counter and straight up asked me, "How much would you want me to give you for you to walk around my house for the rest of the day butt naked?" I was shocked, stupid, and money-loving, so I said, "Shit, $200? He smiled and said, "Follow me." We went to his bedroom and he tried to kiss me. He had his hands down my pants and I became immensely uncomfortable. Next thing I know, Troy busts through the door, saw us and got upset and said,
"The fuck you doing, man? You were supposed to have her ass up, face down by now."
I ran out of the room and told Nyanka what happened, and she and I noped the fuck out of there. We ran away from that house so fast. We looked back behind us and were terrified to see Troy lifting his legs into his car with one hand and what looked like a gun in his other hand. We looked at each other and sprinted to the main road where, for some reason, we knew we were safe. Thankfully, my crush was driving by and saw us and asked if we wanted to go to his house for a kickback. We agreed and got in. When we got to our friend's house, we told them everything, smoked some more and laughed about it. I saw Key again a few times after that, but he never spoke, just hung his head and kept walking. As for Troy, I heard he was locked up for raping another one of my classmates, and is not expected to be out of jail anytime soon. I'm glad. And I hope that we never meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to episode 38. Thank you for being so understanding with the re-upload of episode 35. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but it really couldn't be avoided. Anyway, I'm going to run along now. I've got a little bit more recording to do for the next video. I just want to get a jump on it this week so I'm not running behind. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.